Welcome to another episode of the Massachusetts Pirate Party News. Thanks very much for tuning in to us. That seems like a strange term to use in the age of live streaming, but we'll go with it. My name is James O'Keefe. I'm captain of the Massachusetts Pirate Party. I'm joined today by First Officer Steve Revelak. How are you, Steve?
Good evening, Jamie. I'm doing well.
Excellent. So we had our spring party conference yesterday up in Lowell. It was our first our first in-person conference, or even I think not quite get together, but certainly our first meeting since the pandemic. And it was nice to get back together, have a cookout, and discuss upcoming events as well as plans for the future. Some of the topics that we discussed included focusing on candidate recruitment for 2024, coming up with the schedule for when candidates need to get on the ballot, what mechanisms and we want to do to encourage candidates to run, reaching out to party members and asking that they run, providing the tools they need in order to run, training and documentation and materials and all of those fun things. Additionally, we had a good discussion about discussion of taxes, discussing gas taxes, tolls, excise taxes, and looking at ways, congestion pricing and looking at ways that we can make sure those are both equitable and not harmful to people's privacy. And then one other possible thing we could do in the future is, as some of you may know, the Hollywood tax credit had been temporary and was made permanent last year. And as a result, upwards of $80 or $90 million of our revenue is going to go out the door towards Hollywood. And it would be good to map where that money goes, which communities actually get it, whether it's a filming in their community or it is a business in their community that survives off of the largesse of our tax dollars. Our next party conference will be July 23rd, which is a Sunday. That's the plan, at least. We're looking for a location in the Boston area. If that's something you can help with, send us an email at info@masspirates.org. And, we're happy to look over different locations, and we'd love to hear from you. With that, is there anything I missed, Steve?
No, I think you covered it pretty well, Jamie.
Great. So this is kind of not too long a meeting. I want to say a shout out to Joseph Honorowski, our quartermaster. He's unfortunately sick today. Hope he's feeling better. And with that, you have an update. Steve, what's been going on in Arlington?
What's been going on in Arlington, at least from my perspective, is it's our annual town meeting. So town meetings are the legislative body of a town in communities with a town form of government. Arlington happens to have a representative town meeting, which basically means that there are 252 town meeting members elected once each year for 3-year terms. We hold the elections once a year, but you serve a 3-year term. This is in contrast to communities that have open town meetings where any registered voter is welcome to show up. Now, at a lot of communities, town meeting tends to run one night, maybe two. Arlington, we have I guess you could say that we have a city-sized population, a city-sized budget, and a city-sized level of legislative complexity. We finished night 6, and I'm hoping that we wrap up in another, um, in another, 2 more evenings or so, which is to say we like to talk. Anyway, so I just, although we're still in the middle of it, there are a couple of things we decided to do this year that I thought were, at least, mention worthy. One was a decision to eliminate parking minimums in our central business districts. This was, really is more about practicality and I think making it a little bit easier for people to start a new business. Back in the day, Arlington decided that, we adopted a very suburban set of minimum parking requirements, where, if you run a business, you're expected to provide off-street parking. And where it becomes a challenge is there are places where, there's the businesses predate those requirements, the buildings are there, and a new tenant has zero opportunity to create off-street parking. And besides, creating off-street parking would basically involve knocking down some of the buildings. There's not a good way of dealing with that. Now, there is a provision in our bylaws that would allow them to substitute paid parking in nearby lots, with the kind of with a discretionary approval. So they would have to go through a permitting process that would take approximately 2 months, because there's legal advertising involved and, an appeals period after the decision is made. And so this was the idea here was just let's, any business that comes through is going to, would at least qualify for consideration. So um, let's just make it an option by right, and town meeting adopted it. So, this is encouraging. I know that, parking minimums have been getting a lot of, generating a lot of discussion, because of the way they, contribute to traffic, contribute to high rents, both commercial and residential, and, just make cities and towns less pedestrian friendly. So, we are not yet one of the, more progressive communities that have just done away with them entirely, like Cambridge or Anchorage, Alaska, for example. But, we've made a progress. Another decision we made was to, um, you know, next for our next town election, which will be in the spring of 2024, one of the questions on the ballot will be asking the voters whether they would like to continue to have an elected town clerk or if they would like to move to an appointed position. So these days, being a town clerk, running elections, dealing with open meeting law, it's more of a set of administrative, technical, and sort of like legal requirements. It's not really a policy making position. And with an elected clerk, we happen to have a very good one. But one of the challenges, if one of the challenges we have is like the clerk's races are often not contested. An elected clerk would have to live in town, and frankly, it's very hard to live in Arlington on municipal wages. The housing costs are just really, really high. So town meeting agreed to basically put the question to the voters, and we'll see how that comes out. We filed a home rule petition regarding legal notices. Legal notices are those very dry and boring things that you used to see in the back of the newspaper. Remember newspapers. So this would be, sometimes under, say, state law, you have to, if you're holding, certain types of public hearings, you have to announce them. When your bylaws change, you have to have a legal notice announcing that. Our paper of general circulation has been going downhill and is just picking up speed. And I think the legal notice publications are perhaps in my opinion, it's most redeeming quality at the moment. But so one of the consequences of that is, you there's not a big reader subscriber base. So what you basically have is a requirement to publish legal notices. You have the expense of running them, which could be typically a few $100s per note, per issue. And not that many people are seeing them. So we've basically asked the legislature to allow us to run legal notices other ways, like printing them on a town or a state website, or on a news, on the website of a local news organization, kind of keeping with the keeping in more of moving towards more of the way of where people actually find things these days. It would be nice to see Massachusetts address this on a statewide level, and maybe if enough communities file home rule petitions, they will. I know Bedford, for example, their legal notices, they happen to run them in the Lowell Sun because they no longer have a local newspaper of general circulation. So, modernization.
I mean, that seems peculiar since New Bedford and Lowell are south and north of Massachusetts, right?
Well, they are both in Middlesex County.
Hmm.
So Bedford, I guess you could call it south or central, and
Oh, did you say Bedford or New Bedford?
Bedford.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. Okay, that's a different story.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird. I guess you could ask how many people in Bedford subscribe to the Lowell Sun. I don't know, but I'd imagine it's a little less expensive than, say, the Boston Globe. The Boston Globe's a little pricey, from my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious why, say, like there's multiple event aggregators that are out there. You can post events in Craigslist, the Boston Channel, and others. It seems like that would be a fairly, if there's an API, and I know with Craigslist it isn't always easy for that. They're not very API friendly. But if there was some way that you could say, I'm in this area, and it would just post it out. You just fill the thing out. You go to a state website, say I'm in Middlesex County, and it just goes boop and just posts them all out. So they just get there as events. And certainly it should be on the website, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
town website.
Yeah, a municipal website would be a very good place to, little menu item up on the homepage, legal notices, would make sense. A state website that aggregated them from, different communities, just sort of like as a service, I think would also be suitable. I think any of the options are, that, we discussed would be suitable.
Right. But I mean, that kind of points to we still have a need for things like RSS feeds and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Those old but really, really useful internet standards to be able to go and syndicate different items and be able to have them go across different websites. But also, it's telling that we still, both between the moving online, but also because of private equity taking over a lot of newspapers and in essence gutting them, so they weren't able to rebuild themselves when challenged by internet publications, or just people moving to the internet and being getting their news, and not necessarily news, from so many different alternative sites. So, yeah. Well, great. Thank you for that update, Steve. And then if people want to, get involved for, so once town meeting's over this year, the next one is next year, correct?
So we generally have, most towns do annual meetings annually. So they'll start sometime in the spring. Um, I think the earlier ones might go at the beginning of March, where some of them, the later starting ones, will, you know, go into session kind of late May. It's also fairly common for towns to have what are called special town meetings outside of, by state law, you kind of get one annual one, but the local select board can authorize something different or another one uh, at different points in the year. So sometimes these are used to take up issues where time is of the essence and you don't want to wait, or you don't have the option of waiting, say half a year for the next annual to come around. Others will do it simply to break up the workload. Like, for example, we left, there are quite a number of articles that, were proposed for this spring, but we ended up deferring until for a special town meeting in the fall. So although we may finish up in 8 nights, it could have been longer. And but we're gonna make it back up in probably September or October. Yeah, but
Okay.
if you live in a town where, um, you know, basically if you live in a town that has a representative meeting, you'll need to run you'll need to run for that position, which are, in terms of elections, local representative town meetings, a fairly low bar to, um, get in and participate. If you're in a community with an open town meeting, all you need to do is register to vote and show up. And odds are, if you are in one of those communities, you probably won't be, dragging it out for 8 or 10 nights. It'll be more of a 1 or 2 night investment. And if you're not sure, you could always watch. So these are public meetings. The public, members of the public are welcome to attend and observe. Some communities, Arlington, for example, is one of them. We have a community television station, a public educational and government station. Uh, and one of the services they provide to the community is basically broadcasting these meetings and making them available for view on demand.
Great. And then next elections will be, I think we looked at it, they should be the beginning of April, and then you'd need to get on the ballot like a month or 3 weeks before that, correct?
So it depends on the city and town. Basically, each one has their own schedule, but the general rule of thumb is, once you hit to the new year, sometime after that, not too long after that, nomination papers for running will become available. You'll have local elections, and then the meeting will be started. Meeting will be formed after that. So check it out over if you get a little bit of a break between in the last week of December. Yeah, go to your city or town website and check it out.
And then certainly for cities in Somerville this year, town elections are every year. Roughly a third of the candidates are elected. But city elections will be the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. And for example, with Somerville, nomination papers were available May 1st. The last day to pick them up is June 5th, and then they're due back June 7th, and then have to be formally filed. So they're due back on the 7th for validation. You can keep validating them anytime between the 1st and the May 1st and June 7th. And then they have to be filed with the city June 28th. And that's Somerville, but other cities probably follow roughly similar methods. But check out your city website. I know the Somerville elections division has it nicely laid out. So with that, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Steve, for giving us that detailed look at local government in a local representative town meeting in Arlington. If you're interested, please check us out at masspirates.org. Please like, share, and subscribe. And, we have links below of how you can find us, as well as signing up for our mailing list. So with that, I hope, Steve, you have a lovely evening. And those watching us, we hope, since whether it's live or delayed, we hope you have a great day too. Bye. There you go, Steve.